No.
Welcome into a live edition of the KC Laboratory presented by Emprise Bank, member FDIC, our tremendous partners in Possible here at KC Sports Network. Kent Swanson here with Maddie Lane on a Monday, a Memorial Day Monday. How we doing? How we doing, Maddie?
Listen, we're doing all right. We'd be doing a lot better if Jalen Williams for the Thunder would go back to playing like ass like he has the entire playoff run. That would be a lot better for everybody that likes basketball than what is currently happening.
Cope.
We would really prefer not to watch Shy, let me jive on the ground once again, Alexander play in a finals game, although they probably will. It's a good team. But yeah.
Shea, by the way.
No, it's going to be Shy until he learns how to play basketball like an ethical human being.
So, did you guys do anything over the long weekend, Matthew?
We went down to Charlotte where my wife and some family and stuff did a little bit of a mud run for women's breast cancer. So we got to hang out there, hung out at the Great Wolf Lodge is where we stayed down there in Charlotte. So yeah, we did some stuff. Then actually next week we're going camping. So we got a lot of early part of the summer, school is now out, vacations coming up here. What about you?
I love a good Great Wolf Lodge, man. We have a great time at the one up here in KC. I've never been to the one in Charlotte, so I don't know much about all that. Is it? Have you been to the KCK one? You've been to the KCK
I have not.
one. I thought you took the kids out there for some reason.
Nope.
When they were in town or something. Okay, never mind.
Nope.
Withdrawn. Very nice lodge out there. A lot of fun. I'm actually gonna try to take the kids there sometime this summer. Actually. Just for a little day trip, not like staying overnight, just going into the park and all that good stuff. But yeah, no, we had a good weekend as well. So my oldest is turning 9, so we did a little birthday party with the family on Saturday, and then I had people over for some wings yesterday. Played golf with BJ today. Me and BJ were going to try to play 18. Maddie, you don't know this because you're in North Carolina. It has been raining all day. So we tried
same here. I do know that actually.
We tried to sneak 18 in and we only got through 9 and got a rain check because it was just too rainy. We went and played out at Creekmore and excited to tell everyone that we are going to have our golf tournament at Creekmore this year. So get ready for that. It's going to be August 18th, which is a Monday. Is the day that we're going to be having the golf tournament out at Creekmore, but it is absolutely gorgeous out there. I'd never been out there. Beautiful course. The first half that I got to see. So very excited about that. So if you're looking forward and getting ready for the golf tournament this year, August 18th on Monday,
Big 18,
the Big 18th. We'll see it if that. I don't think the Chiefs are going to be playing a Monday night preseason game, so that's. That's nice. That would be objectively hilarious, though. Golf tournament straight into a Chiefs preseason game where Gardner Minshew throws mesh 15 times. I can't wait. Anyways, appreciate y'all. Happy Monday. Happy Monday to all of you, and thanks for listening on a day where there's a lot of people are have off and all that. So we appreciate you coming and hanging out with us. We are going to do our positional preview later on in the show, but we are going to start with a little exercise that we started doing. We've been rewatching all these games from the 2024 season and trying to look at some of the high level lessons that we might learn about this team for the future for 2025 or some of those kind of things. So we luckily got to watch the Week 14 game against the Los Angeles Chargers, a 1917 primetime football game between two divisional rivals, the 11-1 Kansas City Chiefs and the 8-4 Los Angeles Chargers. And let me tell you, it was about as exciting of a football game as you could possibly imagine, Maddie.
It was a slog. That game was a slog. Let me tell you what. Especially because, so from the Chargers' perspective, they didn't have Ladd McConkey for this game, which, not that the Chargers' offense, even with him, was spectacular or particularly fun, but they could do enough stuff that like it wasn't a terrible watch. Without having Lad McConkey in that game, their offense was dreadful just to like view. And the Chiefs weren't a lot better in their own right. So it was one of the least fun rewatching Chiefs games, knowing the result. Like, I know the Chiefs won this game. I know that it was going to be ugly, but boy, I don't think I was prepared for how ugly this game was on a rewatch. How did that Chiefs team make the Super Bowl, Kent?
That's a vibe I got. It's like, how did this team even make it to the Super Bowl a little bit? And I think winning just cured a lot, right? And we chalked it all up to championship DNA for the entirety of the 2024 season. And
Yeah.
like, to be fair, like that was a thing, right? They just continued to win and they played some of their best football late in the season, and they played it when it mattered the most, except for the Super Bowl, all the way into all the way through the AFC. They played some good football. They played some good football against the Buffalo Bills. But man, it reinforced some of the frustrations that I think we had watching this team all season, and acknowledging the things that could keep them from winning the Super Bowl, even though they continued to win and they went 15-1 with their starters. Watching the offensive line and watching the left tackle position, like boy, they've really got to fix that. And this was the DJ Humphries game, right? This was the attempt at the DJ Humphries game, and you could see how limiting the offensive tackle position was for the Kansas City Chiefs offensively, especially against a good Chargers team that got Patrick Mahomes to hold the ball a beat longer. And, it just reinforced all of the frustrations that this team had at the left tackle spot over the course of the year, which is why they went out and aggressively corrected it by paying Jalen Moore and setting a higher floor for this left tackle position, hopefully, and then also investing in a ceiling that could be the final left tackle in the career of Patrick LaVon Mahomes, a guy that could be a 10-year, 12-year starter in Josh Simmons. So I'm very glad that this team has went out and taken care of business there, because it was frustrating. And this is one of those games that was frustrating in retrospect, watching the left tackle position, acknowledging we were, DJ Humphries was our hope. Like he was like our hope. He was the one we were really hoping was gonna turn things around for this team in the home stretch.
Yeah, I mean, okay, yes, there was hope, but it was also just like, hey, something's got to be done. They can't keep surviving this way. And well, they didn't keep surviving that way until it got to the very end. And this game, along with a bunch of others, was kind of just like the prelude to that. And I guess if we ultimately want to answer the question, and this is what I think one of Tucker and I's biggest takeaways when we did the Super Bowl was, hey, quit playing guards at tackle. Well, this game right here was probably why they opted to play a guard at tackle in the Super Bowl, was because DJ Humphries wasn't particularly good in this game. Now, first time going out there after the injuries, like plural there and everything. So, hey, I understand it, but also, maybe had he not looked so bad in this game, maybe he would have gotten another crack at it in the playoffs or something like that. I don't know. So this was kind of like the catalyst to the Joe Thuney. And I don't mean to pin everything on Joe Thuney in the Super Bowl or going back to that, but he clearly playing left tackle was not a strength. He was very much a weakness that was being attacked, which also led to the weakness of Mike Caliendo playing left guard being attacked. So this kind of started that string, was the Chiefs' last ditch hope to fix left tackle without having to shuffle pieces around. Obviously wasn't going to come in and fix left tackle. So then it became Thuney. So yeah, that wasn't great. This wasn't a good Trey Smith game. This is kind of like the game you watch and you're like, okay, I kind of see maybe why I can build the case for not paying him. There will be other games that we watch where you can build a case for paying him, but this wasn't one of them. So yeah, across the board, offensive line, not great. I don't think the defensive line on the other side of the ball was particularly great. This wasn't a good trenches game across the board. They couldn't really, if it wasn't getting Chris Jones getting pressure and or blitzes getting pressure kind of up the middle, specifically going after Zion Johnson, they couldn't really do anything. They were kind of targeting one guy the entire time. And when they got good matchups versus him, they got pressure, which mattered. When they didn't, Stone Smart was just out there beating the crap out of the Chiefs secondary.
And linebackers too. Stone Smart.
Yeah.
He roasted Nick on one play too. I was like, oh my, that was one of the big explosive plays. One of the 2 touchdown drives that the Chargers were able to put together. The Chiefs were up 13-0. And then they just got bled to death in the third quarter. They completed one possession in the entire third quarter. And they finished the second one pretty shortly after. But like, I one of the things I think I took away is this style of play. These games are not going away in the AFC West. It's you've got to buckle down, and you've just got to get used to these slogs, because I don't think the Chiefs are going to be completely able to avoid them. I hope the offense can execute at a higher level, so we're not as, reliant on, it's not, the Chiefs aren't as reliant on just, championship DNA and figuring things out late and Matthew Wright making 5 field goals. I do think that the Chargers are going to keep playing this style of football, this brand of football. This is how they want to play, even when they have all the pieces together. And then, like, you think about like the Broncos, like this, we don't need to get into the Broncos too much because we're going to have to talk about them at some point with all this stuff too. But it's going to be a slog here. These Chargers games are going to just be slogs. This is how the Chargers are going to win 11, 12 games every year that John Harbaugh's here, Jim Harbaugh's there. And the Chiefs are going to be in these gross games more often than not, anytime that they're playing each other. And it's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait for 2 more of these every single year.
Oh, I can. This is my biggest takeaway. Why can the AFC West just not roll over and die while the Chiefs are trying to start a dynasty like the AFC East did for the entirety of Tom Brady's tenure? Or, I don't know, the entirety of the Bills wannabe dynasty right now? Why can't they just roll over and stop trying like the AFC East has, or the entire AFC South for the history of its existence? Like, just stop. Just stop. Quit hiring good coaches. Quit hiring culture-setting coaches. Quit building these like feisty, tenacious teams that are going to fight and claw every single time they play. Just roll over and stop.
Yeah.
Why? Just let go, man. Realize it's done and just let go. But no, now, just like we've had with the Broncos the entire time, and the Chargers have done a good job. And now I feel like the Raiders have had success against the Chiefs recently too. That they've also had some bad performances, but they've had some success. They undoubtedly have a better front office and coaching staff going right now. They're about to just get a lot more annoying. It is one of the hands down most annoying divisions I think you will ever see that has a team that has clearly been at top of the NFL for this long. Usually when there's a quote unquote dynasty-esque team, the rest of the division they play in is pretty weak, pretty mediocre at best. There's not another guy vying for a top 5 quarterback in the NFL spot. There's not these Super Bowl winning coaches like of the caliber and the pedigree that they see all over this division. It's usually a nothing burger all around them, especially when you have this kind of sustained success, and the Chiefs just simply aren't getting that. So not only do they have every good quarterback in the NFL is in the AFC, but their division is full of all of these, coaches that are honestly going to be able to have like Hall of Fame possibilities, like potential once they get done to coaching. So it's just, it's annoying.
It makes what they're doing all the more impressive though. All these teams are doing a great job building their rosters and playing these disgusting football games and slowing things down and uglying things up and turning them into slugfests is exactly, how you create less variance in these games to give yourself a chance at competing. So, huge credit to them. But gosh, I'm so annoyed. I'm so done with all this.
Stop, man. Just stop.
Tucker, had a great idea. He just dropped it in here. Let's just before we finish the rest of the show, I think this is a great opportunity for us to just decide what the next game is going to be for us to watch on Wednesday. Okay. So we're going to jump in here and we're going to jump into the wheel of games now so we can find out what game we have to watch for Wednesday's show. Can't wait. What if it's the Chargers again?
Gosh.
Yeah,
there's some bangers in there, fellas. There's some bangers. There's still some pretty good games in there. I don't know if you guys guys have taken a look. Let me get the screen ready to share here. But yeah, there's still some pretty darn good games available.
I can't wait.
Let me throw.
This is so exciting.
This into here. We'll do
I'm
that.
nervous. Are the playoffs? Honestly. The playoffs are in.
Can it get worse? Right? They are in there. I don't think it can get worse than that game.
Playoffs are in.
I think there's like 3 games.
Can everybody see the wheel?
Yes, we can see the wheel.
It's there. Yes.
Okay. My computer hasn't caught up yet, so I'm gonna go ahead and click the spin here. You guys will hear the sound effects. Big bucks, no whammies. Here we go.
Week 12 Panthers calling it.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Week 7 at the 49ers.
All right.
Awful. That's actually a pretty decent game. That's a good that was a good Chiefs performance, if you remember correctly.
Yeah.
There were some injuries in that, but
there was some injuries in that, weren't there? That is a fun one though.
Sure.
That's a better option than like several other that we could have had.
Yeah, it'll be a more fun watching experience than the Chargers game from week 14 that we just did for sure. It'll be interesting because I think this was early enough in the year that I don't think we really knew where this Chiefs team was going yet at this point in time, right? We were still trying to figure it out. So it's going to be interesting to see our take now, knowing how essentially the rest of the season from this point on went, to what our thoughts are coming out. Quick question on that same note. Did you get a chance to go back and do your job of re-listening to our post-game show to see how disappointed I was and how I tried to feign excitement over the Chiefs winning a 2-point game against the Chargers?
Maddie, it's Memorial Day weekend. Of course I didn't.
I know. You tried to get Craig and I to rewatch like 18 hours of our own draft coverage one time.
I did not ask you to watch 18 hours. I asked you to watch a little bit back, see what you thought, see if you thought you could do anything better. That's all. I actually went through it a couple of years ago, and it was very helpful for me because it just kind of got me back into that mindset that I need to get into. That's all. I was watching tape. I was grinding the tape. It is what it is. Anyways, let's jump into this. Let's jump into this positional breakdown for the Kansas City Chiefs. We're going to be doing that. We're going to be talking about the defensive tackles. We're going to do it right after this.
Looking for tickets for your next event? Tickets for Less is your #1 source. Save big on every purchase when you use promo code KCSN at ticketsforless.com.
Success in real estate takes more than vision. It takes the right financial partner. When someone takes something rundown and turns it into something great, that's called a comeback story, like Brain Group. They take distressed properties here in KC, completely rework them, and then turn them into valuable real estate. But that kind of work needs the right bank behind it. Enter Emprise Bank. They're not about cookie-cutter loans. They saw Brain Group's vision, backed them, and now they're making big moves in Kansas City real estate. Talk about your partner in possible. Emprise doesn't do one-size-fits-all financing. They invest in potential and back growth. Visit emprisebank.com/KC to learn more. Emprise Bank, member FDIC, equal housing lender.
folks, it's playoff time, and if you're still just watching games, then you're missing out. With Pick 6 from DraftKings, you can turn your hoops knowledge into real cash. Just make your picks, track your score, and if you hit all 6, you're looking at bigger payouts than Prize Picks flex plays. Nobody's dropping better payouts than Pick 6. Hit 6 picks, and that's 25 times your cash. And if you beat your competition, you could be looking at a 500 times bag in your pocket. And right now, new customers can get $50 in bonus picks with just a $5 entry. Here's what you got to do. The playoffs are on, so why not take a shot at making a little money while you're watching? Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app right now and use code KCSN. That's code KCSN to play $5 and get $50 in bonus picks. Better payouts, bigger wins, only on Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 bonus picks that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. Terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
I gotta know, do people love Tucker's reads as much as I do? Because the video version, someone chime in, please. Because
what was your favorite one?
So is him walking into the room. Like,
it's a good one.
Killed me. He keeps coming up with new ways to
That's good. My favorite
so
still
good.
from the last round. This is, for those that are, listening later, something like that, you got to watch Tucker's ad read. My favorite one was always the one where he was just like barely creeping over the couch with just like his nose and his eyes. That one got me every single time. So yeah.
A lot of the one with him peeking around the corner in the top left corner of the screen too. Very good, Tucker. Tucker swinging his feet on the floor is peak. You have to go watch the video, y'all. If you're listening to the audio, go find Tucker's
We can't do it justice.
We really can't. He's so good at it, and it makes me laugh every single time. It is an absolute treat sitting here watching this thing. Maybe it's just me. I might enjoy it more than other people because I know Tuck. I don't know, but it makes me smile every single time. He's doing a fantastic job. So, if you're listening audio only, go check the video out. Go to KCSN's YouTube and check out Tucker's reads. They're amazing. We are doing the defensive tackle tonight. We're talking about the DT and doing a position preview for them. We're gonna jump right into this. This is just the most difficult question I think that we can ask somebody, and we'll talk about who's in the room first, real quick, before I ask it. We've got Chris Jones, Mike Pinnell, Jerry Tillery, Omar Norman Lotz, Fabian Levette, Marlon Tuipulotu, Ika Siaki, and Siaki Ika, and Keziah Izzard, the Penn State defensive tackle. So that's your defensive tackle group as they are heading into the summer. Maddie, let's go here. What's the position? What's the ranking for this on the gas station scale? And I don't know if you need to explain the gas station scale. By all means, do it.
Well, we can do a quick rundown. If you're watching the video, the scale's going across the bottom on the little ticker. But top tier, best in the business to local Kansas Cityans is Quick Trip. Number 2 is Flying J. Number
Casey's.
3 is 7-Eleven. Number 4 is Shell. And number 86 is Casey's. So that is the gas station scale explained. We are now putting the defensive tackle group for the Chiefs into one of those tiers. And we have this issue every year with position groups: quarterback, tight end, defensive tackle. What do you do with an entire room when one player is clearly a tier 1, if not a tier 1 in Chris Jones, but everybody else around him is a shell? How do you even that out? At what point is there, do you weigh the superstar in Chris Jones a little bit heavy and end up in tier 2 at a Flying J? Or do you say, yeah, that's cool to have one guy that can do all that, but he's playing 70% of the snaps and the guy with him for all of those snaps is not that great. When he's off the field, nobody's that particular great. So do we go down to a 7-Eleven? How do you balance out something when there's this big of a disparity in the room, Kent?
It is a very tricky, and it's a sliding scale. If you're being honest, you've got to look at the magnitude, the gravity of the superstar player that you have there. I think when you're trying to take into consideration all of that, I think if you looked at, and it's unfair too, because I think there's two lines of think. First off, Chris Jones is one of the best interior defensive tackles in football still. However, if you took him away, it's probably the worst defensive line group in football. I'm having a hard time looking at this and arguing anything else other than the worst defensive tackle group in the National Football League outside of Chris Jones. And not to disrespect this group, I think strategically the Chiefs, philosophically too, are approaching it kind of like this, right? What they don't care about their one tech, how much they're spending on their one techs. They don't really care about who their one techs are because they're throwing a lot of bodies at that one tech position, right? Mike Pinnell, Fabian Levette, Marlon Tuipulotu, Siaki Ika. They got 4 of those one tech nose types that they've churned and burned through over the last, the entirety of the Mahomes era, right? And they've always just had, the minimum invested along the defensive line there or at the one tech spot. But even outside of that, if you remove Chris Jones, Jerry Tillery, and Omar Norman, that's not something that's inspiring a ton of confidence. I still think Chris Jones is an elite defensive tackle because of that. I give this group a 7-11 with him carrying all of the burden here. He's carrying so much of it. But man, it's really just there's not a ton there outside of him when you look at just impact players or significant.
This is a tricky one for me. It really is. So you think Chris Jones carries them to a 7-11, which is tier 3, which is like, yeah, this will do in a pinch, but you'd really like it to be better. So even with Chris Jones, you think it's not even like good. It's just,
Oh wait, sorry,
eh.
Flying J. I meant Flying J. Flying J.
Yeah,
Flying J is so bad.
Changes a good bit of it. Well, no, it's actually tier 2.
It's
not. Yeah, it's Flying J's at tier 2. So you're going tier 2 with the defensive tackles. Okay.
Yeah.
Are
you a 7-11?
I really don't know. This is the hardest one for me to rank because, like I said, we're going to do this with quarterback and tight end. But the difference is I can justify, well, one, the quarterback only plays one and you play them all the time. So like it doesn't matter about the depth of the other players. Tight end, yes, you play them more frequently, but generally speaking, having an okay tight end for like your backup player isn't a big deal. Whereas having an okay D tackle too, that's always on the field because there is always going to be at least one other guy isn't great. And when everybody else behind him who does have to play is also not great, it kind of weighs more. So like, I do think you have to weigh the lack of depth a little bit more with the D tackle room than you do these other places. But with Chris Jones, and the way he's still playing, and I do think last year there was a small step back. I think last year he didn't play the run as well as he had in the past. I think the Chiefs are doing more where they're trying to set their defensive, like their entire pass rush up. And I think this has been a Colin thing. I think the longer that Colin has been here, we've seen this a little bit more. They are trying to kind of build in a lot more Chris Jones moves around. We get him these specific one-on-one matchups rather than they come within the flow of everything else that I think you got before when it was more of Spags and Brendan Daly's show, right? So I do think they've changed it. And with that, so a slight step back while also putting Chris Jones in more advantageous positions, it does give me a slight pause, but I still think I got to go Flying J. I'm just going to go with like the Flying J that doesn't got a lot of TLC. We're not going with one of the good ones here. We're getting one of the bad ones. We're getting ones on like the outskirts of the town. You don't really want to stop there, but you know it'll do the trick. You know it'll be fine. You know it'll be good and give you everything you need, but you're not exactly excited about it. That's kind of how I feel about this D tackle room.
I think it's fair. And we can talk about the best, we can talk about the best player at the position. And I think it's too easy to just, like that's the next thing we talk about. But and I think it's contextually, I don't really want to just sit here and go, yeah, Chris Jones, like maybe just talk a little bit about like, yeah, we saw him take a step back. He's still clear cut the best player. He's still one of the best defensive tackles in football. But you are starting to just have a little bit more concern about, like you said, like I think a little bit of concern that maybe it's on the downswing. Maybe we've seen the career year from Chris Jones a little bit. Not that, it's such a problem that, he's overpaid or something. Like he's still one of the best defensive tackles in football, but definitely some signs that give you a little bit of pause and concern that, the best days are behind him a little bit. He's starting to, take small incremental steps away from his peak.
Yeah, I think that's a possibility. He's getting older. We talked about it. I talked about it a lot last offseason that defensive tackles his age usually start to have a pretty stark downturn from elite to okay. Like it comes pretty fast. And I think he was by far better than okay last year, but this was the year where it really started. Like last year was probably still pretty squarely in you won't see an age drop off, but this year and next year is where if it's going to happen, it might just happen like that. And so that is something to be cognizant of, especially if he's going to continue to be relied on for a heavy snap count like he has been and be relied on to kind of be the sun and the stars of this Chiefs defensive pass rush of the front seven, where everything is centered around getting him these matchups that he has to take advantage of for them to be successful. If you look at how the Chiefs like defensive operates, it's Spags wins based on his call is over here. And then you have Chris Jones wins based on the matchup that they got over here. And like, there's not a lot of crossover there, but when you go this Chris Jones matchup route, he kind of has to win, or nobody else is really in a great position to win. When they get him that one-on-one versus the fourth or fifth best offensive lineman, and that's it, like, he has to win that matchup, or there's not a lot else going on. You get a double team on one of your other defensive linemen who are already average pass rushers. Maybe you do send a blitz to occupy somebody. That's one less person in coverage. You don't always have the most exotic coverage rotation on the back end. So it just puts a lot of pressure on Chris Jones to have to win in those situations all the time. And if he gets to the point to where he's not doing that as frequently, that's an issue. Like, I don't think he specifically always makes the job for everybody else easier. And part of that scheme, part of that's why would you not, want to isolate and weaponize Chris Jones as much as you can? It makes sense. It's just, I don't know if having him the way they used him last year makes Karlaftis' job easier, as much as we think, as we like to say it is, oh, Karlaftis got one-on-one with the player because of this. Like, yes, partially because of Chris Jones, but he was still schemed up there. If you look at the other 3 plays on the drive, Karlaftis is running into a double team, or he's getting the one getting chipped because the way they have it cut up. So I kind of go back and forth on if I love the change of moving Chris Jones to DN so much, if I love the change of trying to center everything around Chris Jones, or if just going back to having him play 3 tech and just lining him up and letting him rip and either forcing teams to double team him and be weaker everywhere else, or letting him have that one-on-one. Like, it feels like the Chiefs are trying to take that decision away and force these one-on-one matchups. I just don't know if I love that strategy going forward or not. I'm willing to give it another year, but I'm kind of going back and forth.
And it was giving Chris Jones a lot of freedom there in that regard too, right? Like, they left the door open for him. And I think there's at least a little bit of a conversation that's worth having around, like, is it the Chiefs, what the Chiefs are doing, or is it what Chris is doing, right? Because, like we talked about, some of the inconsistencies up and down this year, right? Maybe a little bit of big play hunting at times when he is, when he's moving around the defensive line and trying to make some splash plays, and maybe not always being able to do what he did 2 years prior when he was playing for that contract. Then you talk a little bit about some of the inconsistencies against the run, right? I don't know if it's just he's completely lost that ability, or if it's just not been as big a priority in 2025 as it was for him in 2024 or 2023 versus 2024, right? So, I think that's going to be a big question heading into this offseason is, does Chris Jones get back to the 2023 version that made him so successful and that made this defense elite? Because he played such a huge role in that. And not that, he's, super problematic. There are some things and some details that if he takes care of and he cleans up, he can be, he can take this entire unit to a level. Like, that's the kind of ability, if he's able to play with that consistency that Joe Cullen was able to get out of him in 2023, it's defense changing. So, especially now that the Chiefs have more horses in the secondary and at the cornerback spot too. So, I think that's the direction I just wanted to take the conversation around Chris a little bit, just because, he's so clearly, obviously the best player. We don't even need to have a debate about that. It's just, what does the outlook for 2025 look like? What can he glean from 2023? And what can he remove from 2024 that can help him be, great. His pressure rates are through the roof and all that stuff, but, not all pressure is created equal. And, how he arrived at that pressure can sometimes tell a story as well. And so I'm curious to see what it looks like for Chris Jones in 2025, because they need the 2023 version, I think, almost more than they got the 2024 version.
Well, yeah, they do. And like, you started that off with saying, like, Chris Jones was given freedom, and we don't know how much of what some of the stuff that happens is his choice of the defensive structure. I think Chris Jones is more than happy to take a backdoor gap or to change his gap on a pass rush if he thinks he has an advantage there. But I also think the structure gives him that green light. Like, the entire defense is set up to give Chris Jones 2 gaps to operate in and everybody else 1, and to cover the gap that, he kind of not abandons, but is not choosing, right? So it's very much situated for Chris Jones to have a big impact. And I do think he was very good last year. I just don't think his impact last year was as game-changing, especially in the biggest games, as it had been the year before, as it was in 2023, where it felt like anytime there was a big game with a lot on the line, Chris Jones was making plays. Last year, it was like, yeah, they're there. There's good plays to be had. It just didn't feel like he was constantly changing everything. And I think part of that was because the Chiefs were having to go out of their way, or not having to, but deciding decided to go out of their way to manufacture these matchups for him. And then offenses just said, well, we're going to get rid of the ball quicker when we know you're one-on-one with our bad right tackle. I also think it's worth noting he played his highest percentage of snaps last year of his career.
Wow.
83% of the snaps. I don't think that's a winning formula. And now the problem is who's going to take a step up to, allow him to play a little bit less, but
well, I got a great question for you. Who takes a step, Matthew? Who takes a step? And I know you've tried to frame it as like people carrying over from 2024's roster, but I don't think that has to be the case. Especially at a position like defensive tackle, like players that potentially could take a step. Yeah, we could talk about Mike Pennell and Fabian Levette and Marlon Tuipulotu, I guess. But and I think they fit in. I think one of them at least might fit in one of these other buckets. But the two big additions are Jerry Tillery and Omar Norman Lott, and I say big. One's a second round pick, and one signed for under $2 million APY on a 1-year deal. But I think that's where you see potential upside, potential contribution in a meaningful way is from the second round pick out of Tennessee and Jerry Tillery, the unrestricted free agent from Minnesota last season.
So do we think that Jerry Tillery's playing D tackle? He's played more snaps and most of his stops at defensive end or over the tackle. And now some of that's with odd front teams and 5-tech alignments that the Chiefs don't use, but he has not often been a true nose tackle. So I think we got to factor him in here. I just kind of wonder what are we doing with this?
I think he's going to be an interior player. I do. I think it's, I don't know how. Well, I mean, I think him and Chris can coexist, but I don't know how your run game is going to look again, in that regard. I think he's an interior player. I think he's going to be an interior player in a 4-down look for the Chiefs.
Probably, I think so. I don't know. Odd situation. Okay. Taking a step, Siaki Ika, because, he didn't really play last year, and the Chiefs are really going to need someone to play next to Mike Pennell, who I love. I love Mike Pennell. Mike Pennell's great as a run defender for 30% of your snaps a game. And him and Derek Nottie kind of split the snaps with Pennell playing the most, but he's also getting older. You now also need to replace Derek Nottie's snaps because he is no longer on the team. So somebody has to step up to not only take his snaps, but probably eat a little bit into what Mike Pennell was playing last year. Because again, what is he, 35 or 36 years old now? That's a lot. That's a lot of years on the body for a guy asked to be the primary nose tech, the primary one tech for a team to stop the run. So Ika is a guy that his junior year in college, he had top 50 hype coming out of the draft. He had transferred to Baylor. He had this great year.
He had first round hype. I saw first round buzz. Yeah.
And then he didn't have a great final season, goes a little bit later in the draft, plays a little bit as a rookie, but not a lot, and it just doesn't quite work. You just got to hope you can tap into that talent and get him to take a step forward to not only be a snap eater as a nose tackle to help Mike Pennell, but maybe you get back that guy that once upon a time had this top 50 hype in terms of potential. And now you get a 3-down one technique, a guy that maybe doesn't have dominant pass rush traits, but doesn't have to be rushed off the field just because it's 2nd and 7. A guy that can go out there and make plays versus the run and the pass a little bit. So I think of all the players, if there's one guy that if we can tap into the highest level of potential he has that we haven't seen yet, he might be the one that would benefit them the most.
Yeah, and I think you could put in. I think he could even be considered a sleeper or whatever. And I might put another guy that kind of fits in that mold a little bit. I think the upside exists with Tillery and Norman Lott as guys that could potentially take a step and be meaningful contributors and provide some juice for this team. Because we are talking about, when you're talking about Pennell, Ika, Fabian Levette, Marlon Tuipulotu, which, by the way, Tuipulotu earned a roster spot over Levette and Siaki Ika last year, right? So, you're talking about nose tackles 3 and 4 for this team as interesting players that could potentially contribute to this team. As little as their one techs are playing in the first place, I don't know, man. That's a tough battle. And I look at Tillery and I look at Norman Lott and I look at the only players that can really take a step and provide some upside to this and some juice to this pass rush, right? I think these are the two guys that have the chance to help make meaningful contributions to help get this team essentially to the level that they were last year at the defensive tackle position. That's the thing we haven't spent a lot of time talking about is there's a lot of opportunity out there, for somebody to take the Turk Wharton role, right? And that's a major loss for this defense, right? That's a significant loss for this team. And Omar Norman Lott and Jerry Tillery have to find a way to essentially replace that in the aggregate. And they've got to find some, they got to provide some juice along the interior for this team to just help them get back to par with what they were last season, right? Like it's a big task for those guys. And Omar Norman Lott and Jerry Tillery serve as the best bet for this group to be able to generate some interior rush, because outside of that, there is nobody. There really is nobody along the interior outside of Chris Jones that can really be that, that second rusher along the interior. They really badly need some juice from those guys. They need those guys to make some kind of contribution in 2025, or it is a sizable step back from the 2024 defensive tackle group, because Turk's a big loss, man.
No, he is. And Turk being a big loss, I think definitely matters to this team. I will say, with Jerry Tillery and then with drafting Omar Norman Lott, you gave yourself some swings on that type of player. Now, you're probably looking to guys that are more in line with Tershawn Wharton of 3 seasons, of pre-ACL injury, because he returned from the knee, had his half a season to kind of get healthy, and then was really good, right? You're probably chasing with Tillery from what we've seen in the NFL, or even Omar Norman Lott, especially as a rookie, that lower end early career Tershawn Wharton, but you at least got yourself guys of that same skill set, that same general body type, the kind of same role that you're hoping for. So they've at least given themselves some swings to replacing that type of guy. Where Wharton got really good is he added weight, and he was able, not necessarily on, third and short or whatever, but he could play next to Chris Jones a little bit. And I don't know if I see that for Tillery or Omar Norman Lott right now. They seem like pretty squarely they are backups to him. And that's kind of why I wanted to focus on the nose tackle spot for a step up, because I just think that's where they're a little bit more desperate for bodies, is they need someone to play next to Chris Jones and then also back up Pennell a little bit.
That's a good point, because you definitely saw Turk and Chris in there a lot together plenty of times. And I think, talk about sleepers and UDFAs to watch, right? You threw out Siaki Ika. Is there another name that you're paying attention to along the defensive line outside of that?
That was my big one for that. I used him a little bit earlier there because I think that was the spot where we really need someone to step up. So a sleeper. I guess let's go back to Fabian Levette. I'm trying to go what other nose tackle I want to go with. Levette was a guy, he started along the Florida State defensive line that had a lot of talent for the past, 4 years. He was in and out of the lineup. He played a lot, really long arms. If he kind of gets to his NFL strength, he's ready for the game. He can control space in a way that some of these other guys can't, just because of his, like I said, the long arms, the ability to play with extensions. So there is something there to work with. So I could see a path for him kind of winning out that job, because he does provide something a little bit more unique than others. But to be honest, if I'm taking Ika out of the equation because I already used them, I don't know if I have a lot of guys I would really sit here and stand on the table and say, this guy's going to make the roster that we're considering a sleeper at this point in time.
What % chance do you think one of Fabian Levette Fabian Levette or Siaki Ika is on the roster for week 1?
What %? Just one of them?
One. Because, you've got Marlon Tuipulotu that also got opportunity, right? So,
yeah.
Give me a % chance that at least one of those players makes the roster.
I'm gonna go 51%. Just over a 50-50, because I do think they need somebody else to stop the run. And I understand last year that they didn't use either one of those guys, but they did still have Nadi, right? They still had his body, and Tershawn Wharton had become a at least acceptable run defender. They downgraded from Tershawn Wharton's run defense with Omar Norman Lott, and Jerry Tillery's a different style of run defender, maybe about the same, but just a little different style. And then they lost Derek Nadi. So they need somebody else to come in and plug up the run. And I don't think it's Tillery. I don't think it's Omar Norman Lott. It's not Chris Jones. So who else is plugging up runs if they're not going to use one of those two bigger bodies?
No, I think that's true. I just point back to Tuipulotu gets the opportunity to be on the active roster in 2025, and maybe that's just because, or 2024, and maybe that's just because they felt better chances of protecting their inventory along the defensive tackle position by holding on to Pelotu. I think they had to claim him off waivers. No, I think he was just shortly. He played meaningful snaps in 2023 for the Eagles, and then he was just available to them. So, I like both Levet and Ika a lot, and so I think it'd be fun to see one of them because like we liked Levet as we put like a 4th round grade on him coming out. I think we had like a 3rd on Ika 4 years ago or whatever, whenever he came out as well. So 2 interesting swings there. I will say if you don't know much about Keziah Izzard, he has the frame of a very similar frame to Turk Wharton in a very exceptional athletic profile. And so when you're looking at his relative athletic score, 9.7, 9.71 relative athletic score. You've got some really explosive numbers, really good explosion, 34-inch arms. So like I think he's another undersized, juiced up interior player that you're trying to get some sparks, some burst along the interior. He's just a fun swing there. So if you're talking about a sleeper UDFA to watch, like that's a athletic profile that they've had success with, and maybe they're just trying to replicate that a little bit and see what they get with a similar profile in that defensive tackle room. Okay, players to add. Is there anybody that you would like to see the Chiefs add to their interior defensive line before the season starts, Matthew?
I mean, yeah, it's theme. Give me some more one techs. Raekwon Davis, I believe, is a free agent from the Indianapolis Colts. Austin Johnson is done with the Bills. And neither of these guys aren't going to be sexy ads. They are not going to go out there and provide a lot of pressures, but I think both are big-bodied guys that can go out there, maybe eat up some snaps when you want to give Pennell rest or when you need somebody else to play in his stint. They're veterans, so they've been around for a while. You can probably get them up to speed a little bit faster. I just think, maybe one of those 2 guys. And then there's a couple other defensive tackles that are similar out there that are available. I'm just kind of not going too far over the hill. Guys like Linval Joseph, I know is still available and still trying to play, but like that seems a little far down the road now.
Yeah, I mean, Raekwon Davis is a clear step above these guys that we've talked about as a one tech run stuffer type player. So like adding him into that mix, I think that makes sense because you're making that room better. Like I see, it kind of feels to me, and like the Chiefs have definitely approached the interior defensive line outside of Chris is, especially the nose tackle spot is like very minimal investments. They've had the Pennell Noddy duo that have been league minimum last year, right? And this year they are employing a same strategy with, some 90-man roster spots, essentially players that were on their practice squad last season that, I think they're maybe checking to see if they can, that they can take that step in 2025 for this team. So it's a strategy that they've, tried to offset Chris's costs. They've tried to do that. And, we'll see who kind of comes out of this on the other side. They've generated great competition. I think it's one of the more interesting battles is the one tech position for the Chiefs and who kind of gets out of here. I think it's one of the more interesting spots on this roster in 2025.
Yeah, I mean, it is. And like, you're not selecting from a lot of like high profile or guys that are going to make a big impact. Right. Like, you're right. Regardless of what we say here, they're definitely still trying to just like not piece it together, but they are okay not spending a lot of capital on the players that are going to play next to Chris Jones on the interior. I just do think that you got to hit a certain level of play, and maybe Derek Nottie is a low bar to set, but he did play there. And like, okay, if I tell you right now, which defensive tackles on the Chiefs roster are definitely this year going to give you better than Derek Nottie level play from last year, like how many names you giving me?
I don't know. I mean, I love Mike Pennell. Big Mike Pennell fan. He's also like 34, 35 years old too. So like, I don't know. Outside of, at the one tech spot, I don't know.
I mean, even now, just across the board though. I mean, 2, right?
Chris.
Like, Chris, Pennell, I think will play better than Derek Nottie. I just think Pennell's been better, right? He's been better than Derek Nottie.
It's just age stuff.
Him, and then like maybe Jerry Tillery, maybe Omar Norman Lott really hits it on the ground running and like goes. Neither one of those guys are the same level of run defender, but like just across the board, like you're taking, and Derek Nottie wasn't even as good as Tershawn Wharton last year. So you're now like, I don't know. It seems like they're bleeding talent on an already very thin room. So they need someone to really, really step up. And if you can't get that, you got to find someone to backfill. I don't know. Just intriguing names that might be out there that could come in and provide better than what they have. One last guy, Armon Watts. He's been bouncing around the league the past couple seasons, but like he always finds his way into playing a couple snaps or a few snaps everywhere he plays. So maybe not as big as some of the other guys we said, but he does a little bit more as a pass rusher than the other names we talked about as free agents. I wouldn't, hate bringing him in, even though he's not a true nose tackle. He's probably better versed the run than Mike Pennell, and still gives you a little pass rush. There's players out there that could come in, I think, and make this 53-man roster ahead of some of the guys we've been talking about if they really wanted to.
Do you think the Chiefs add someone that can make the 53-man roster at the defensive tackle position before week 1?
Yes.
Okay.
Even if it's just like a veteran, even if it's like a Mike Pennell level veteran when they first started doing the Mike Pennell dance a couple years back, that maybe gets cut, one of the last round of cuts. Maybe he's somebody that doesn't even get a play in the preseason for him. They just happen to catch somebody that gets caught up in the cut down day, and they say, oh, we'll like him a little bit more than these guys we have. We'll bring him in and give him 4 weeks before we unleash him. But yeah, I do think they add somebody else. Somebody makes his 53-man roster at the D tackle spot that's not currently on the roster.
If we don't see that move, it means maybe they're interested in some of these young guys that they've kept inventory of in that practice squad. Good. And I'm fascinated to see what it looks like. I think it's going to be an interesting competition, and I think there's a couple roster spots available there on the interior of the defensive line. That is going to do it for this Monday edition of the KC Laboratory. Thank you all so much for listening, watching, supporting. We love you. We appreciate you. We'll catch you later.
Come on, Wolves.